In this video we're going to give you a quick tour around the Photoshop workspace and introduce you to the main elements of the workspace and what they do. Now the first part of the workspace you'll see is this ribbon up the top here. Now this is called the application menu, or sometimes people call them the pull down menus. Now if you click on the various subsets, you'll reveal a whole series of application options. Now some of these options, you notice, will have flyouts associated with them. The little arrow you can see to the side that opens up further functionality under that tool. Now you notice as well off to the side here there's a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts that are listed. Now as you become more familiar with the commonly used functions in Photoshop, you'll find yourself using these more and more. Now the shortcuts in a Windows-based machine is usually activated by the Control plus a keyboard numeric. In this case, a new file is Control plus N. Now in a Macintosh operating system, this would be the Command key. Now we can scroll through and see, and when we get to the sort of edit and image and so on, we can see that some of the functionality is grayed out. The reason for that is because the action or process that we're undertaking at the moment is not activating that tool. So really only the functions that are activated are things that we can sort of access at this time. So we can see there's a bunch of operations through there. Now you can see here I've got the workspace open with a file of my favorite Riga robot radio. Now you can see here in this top panel through here is a series of tabs, and as we open more and more Photoshop files, we can access and quickly switch between different open files through this series of tabs up the top of the workspace. Now off to the left here you can see a series of tool panels. Now like the application menu, these tool panels as well, they have a series of flyouts. So sometimes I or other help or tutorial lessons will refer to a tool that's maybe not immediately visible from the sort of headline tool panel, but it's probably just hidden underneath one of the other tools, and you can see a series of flyouts which are indicated by this arrow off to the side. Now you notice that as I scroll through and select the different tools, in the control panel through here I get different modifiers for that tool. So for example, in the pencil tool that I have at the moment, I can select the size of the pencil, how it's going to work in normal mode, and what opacity that pencil will draw in. Okay, so for example, if we drew with a 26 pixel brush, or alternatively we can bring that smaller, and then we can draw with a smaller brush. So that's how the control panel works through here. Now off to the side through here you'll see there's a series of panels, or sometimes I refer to them as tool palettes. Now these are ways of modifying or editing or altering your workspace itself. Now the setout of the panels on the side can be customized to different styles of using Photoshop. There's a few presets on the top through here. You can see there's the Essentials preset, which kind of minimizes those panels to a small label off to the side. So if we want to access the layers panel, for example, we click on that and it expands it off to the side. Now, I often like using the design workspace default, and because mainly the panels or tools that are opened up through the side are probably the most common tools that I'd use in an architectural application anyway. Now I can minimize the icons off to the side through these little arrow keys off to the top. Now this saves you a little bit of acreage on the screen. However, generally speaking, when you're learning the application or even your own preference, I quite like having the palettes open so I can see where everything is and I can access it rather quickly. You can change and customize your panels off to the side. You can see here the default is giving me the history palette, which I can undock and put through there. It's also giving me the bridge palette through there. Now, I generally don't use the bridge palette too much, so I'm just going to close that panel off. But I do quite like the history panel, so I'm going to dock this off to the right hand side with the rest of my panels. Now there's two ways I can do this. Now if I drag it to the side, you can see it can create a new section. You can see the blue line between panel sections, and if I release the mouse, it will dock that history panel within the sort of panels I've got here. Now I can adjust the height and spacing of all of these if I want to give myself a nice workspace through there. Now perhaps say I am not too interested in the info tab off to the side here. I can actually pull that out. I can make it its own thing, or I can just collapse it off and make it go away. Now if I want to open new panels, I can go through the application menu and I can show the new windows through here. So these are a whole bunch of panels that I can open up. So for example, if I wanted to open up the histogram panel, it will then open up the histogram or the navigator as well. I can combine the two, and perhaps I can even drag this. Now this time, instead of creating a new panel, I'm going to append the swatches and styles. So if I release that, you can see the blue of the actual bar itself. Release that, and then I can just navigate between those tabs. Now sometimes while navigating through the workspace, you can zoom in, zoom out, but I guess the easy to remember shortcut keys for zoom in and zoom out are the Control minus to zoom out and Control plus keys to zoom in. If I want to zoom to the extents of the image, I go Control and 0, and if I want to pan, I hold my Shift key down and you can see my little hand, and then I can pan, from left to right. Okay, Control 0, and I minimize the space through there. Now Adobe has some brilliant help menus as well, accessed through the help, Photoshop help. Now the only other thing is you're probably asking, well, where can I get my own version of Photoshop? Well, you can use Photoshop in the labs at the School of Architecture, but if you want your own, you'll unfortunately have to buy a version. Adobe don't provide free student versions of Photoshop, but here's a few options where you can purchase software online, and typically speaking, an education version of Creative Suite Design Standard should set you back somewhere between $300 and $350. So hopefully that gives you a reasonable overview of the workspace, and if you stick around in the next video we're going to be scanning some images.